welcome back to the 2016 Baton Rouge Blues Festival, to Backstage at the Bluesfest. I'm Bret Boutwell, and I'm here interviewing one of our artists this year, the Reverend Payton of Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Real glad to be here.
Reverend Payton's going to be playing not once but twice at the 2016 Baton Rouge Blues Festival. Once very shortly, in about an hour or so, and then once tomorrow.
Yeah. And today the show is going to be a really amazing set. It is we did this Blues Revolution tour thing where we went around the country touring, and we brought with us artists that we thought were doing legit things with blues music, like making music, not just regurgitating old sounds, but actually making music that really understood. And it was kind of a collaborative thing where everybody got to play a little bit, and then we made music together. And so today is going to be one of those sets. It's like our Blues Revolution tour, but here at this festival with Jimbo Mathis and Charlie Parr. Yeah. It's going to be really cool. Really cool. And it's not super rehearsed, so you're going to get to see some musicians making it happen. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting.
It's also pretty legit.
It's going to be exciting, yeah. That's more often than not. Yeah. If you're going to be a pro, you got to know how to fake it, too. So, but you know, anyway, we're real glad to be here.
So that's at 4:45 today, and tomorrow with your regular group, Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band. At what time?
That I'm not exactly sure.
All right. I think that it's tomorrow anyway, and
definitely.
And
two that we're seeing here.
The Reverend Payton is a tireless tourer and a tireless musician out on the road, bringing the blues to America and bringing the blues to Europe. For more than a decade now.
That's right, yeah.
And you
full-time, we'll have full-time in June of this year. It'll be 10 years that we've been on the road doing nothing but this. So
and
we've played in 32 different countries, yeah, all the lower 48 states. So I never thought I'd ever get to see any of that stuff. So.
And you can form complete sentences and everything, right? So the blues is a music of the deep South and of the rural South. You're from rural Indiana.
That's right, Southern Indiana.
Yeah. How did you find the blues as a guy from Southern
Indiana?
Well,
you know, here's the thing. You know, Southern Indiana is a unique subculture in the United States. It's like it's a little known place. It's kind of like the Ozarks, in that it's a very interesting rural place, but it's not as well known as Appalachia. Yeah. It's not as famous as you know, maybe even you know, Louisiana. Yeah. So there's no interstate that runs through where I'm from, and that's part of it. You know, when there's no interstate that runs through, not a lot of people get to see it. And you know, sort of growing up in that kind of, you know, with a little bit of like you know, the rural isolation and whatnot, the country blues always spoke to me. You know what I mean? It always felt like that was you know, a way to tell stories. You know, so often now, like blues has become kind of homogenized, and it's 12 bars and turnarounds, and that's it. And you know, it's sort of, in my opinion, it takes a lot of the feeling and a lot of the storytelling out of it. You know, the idea, you know, in my mind, with any music, is you should be, you know, creating music that tells stories and makes people feel something. Sometimes both at the same time. And at least one or the other. At least one or the other. And you know, it's the art of, you know, fingerstyle country blues become kind of a dying art. You know, there's not very many people that really do it, and you know, there's a lot of people that fake it, but not a lot of people that really do it. And you know, in my mind, you know, what you're supposed to do when you're playing country blues with a guitar, when you are, you know, if you're really wanting to get back into it, is the idea of you're playing two things at once. You know, your thumb plays a rhythm, a bass line, and then your fingers, they play the melody at the same time. When I first heard someone do this, it blew my mind. I thought it was like magic. It might as well have been magic, you know. But yeah, I just love that style, you know. I just think it's amazing. And I've spent my whole life, you know, not just not just studying it, not just playing it, but trying to like actually take it to new places and you know, make music that's alive. Like in blues anymore, you know, there's all these like societies that are like, we need to save blues music, and I always tell them, like, the best way to save any music is to make good music. That's how music survives. No one cares about, you know, like especially kids. You know, you can talk about music in history books all day long, but unless people are making music that makes them feel something, then that's all it is. It's history books. It doesn't matter. You know, it literally doesn't matter. You know, that's the way music works.
But the life of a touring musician isn't an easy one. And today it seems like to make a living, you have to be out there doing what you're doing.
Well, that's the nature of it. You know,
year,
you have to commit. This day and age, you have a choice in terms of you know, doing music professionally, and that is either you can do it, and that means being on the road, because there is no such thing as record money anymore. It just doesn't exist. You know, it's why all these old guys that you know, hate touring, like Bob Dylan, and you know, that's why they're out there touring, because they're not making money from, you know, the same you know, Spotify and everything else has killed them the same way it's hurt everybody else. So if you don't go out there and do it in front of people, it ain't the money ain't coming from anywhere else. So you have to make it happen. For us, it means 200 dates a year on the road.
So the music that you play on the road, do you find yourself growing on the road as a musician and developing, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always tell people, you know, if you have spent 10 years on the road, like literally 10 years on the road. When we first started doing this, we were homeless. We lived in a van. We had nothing. Didn't know where our next meal was going to come from. If we didn't sell CDs that day, we didn't eat, you know. Yeah. And when you have done that for 10 years, if that doesn't change you, then I don't know how you lived, you know. I don't think you did, you know.
Yeah. So your fingerstyle guitar, I mean, I hope people understand the technique necessary to pull off what we just heard a minute ago. It's not just any guitar player who can do that. And if you listen to the Reverend Payton's album, his most recent one, So Delicious, 2015 on Yazoo Records, I recommend to everybody out there. If you want a preview of it, you can hear some online. The best way is to buy it, though. You can hear a lot of great guitar playing, and you can hear guitar playing on a lot of different instruments, too.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of resonator guitar on that album, but what are some of your instruments you play?
Well, I play on that record, I mean, from, you know, just a regular old flat-top acoustic guitar to a lot of vintage stuff, vintage K, Silvertone. I've got a lot of my national guitar that it's at the stage right now. Or else I'd have it.
Or
it's a wooden body National, and I love the wooden body resonator guitars. Like Sunhouse didn't play one, so they're not as well known. You know, if guitars are like that, the vintage guitar market, all matters who played it. You know, if Eric Clapton played it or something, then it's worth money. Doesn't matter if they made 500,000 of them. Doesn't make a difference. You know, and the guitar that I love, my favorite guitar is a National Trojan. They only made 1,200 of them between 1934 and 1936, and I own 3, which I think means I own the biggest collection of them still in existence. But basically, whenever I'm on the road and I find one, if I can afford it at all, I pick it up. And recently, the National Guitar Company, the new Resophonic company out of California, they built me like a reproduction of it, so I can tour that one and then leave my old ones at home. So it's really nice, because when they got to be, you know, about 80 years old, the glue started completely coming apart. So it was to make a decision. It was either play them until they completely fall apart, or try to keep them alive, you know, for at least a little bit longer. So that's my hope.
Did you learn your style of playing from records, or did you have
I learned the same way.
Teacher?
I learned the exact same way Robert Johnson did from the records.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's interesting is, you know, when you go back to like Charlie Patton learned face to face from people, and that's, you know, but he was like the last generation that did that. Robert Johnson learned from the records. You know, that it's like you can hear it, if nothing else, in phonograph blues. I mean, that was it. And it completely changed everything. It changed the world in terms of you know, music. Like used to, music was very like very local. It had to be. You know, and you only learned face to face, and that's why, like, you know, these genres would pop up in a cluster. And now it's not that way as much, because, you know, thanks to the internet and recorded sound, you know, you can be studying music in India. You know, it's not the same as it used to be.
And one of the amazing things about Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band most recent album is it's on Yazoo Records, which blues aficionados might recognize that name. This is a label in the 60s reissued a lot of these classic recordings by people like Patton and others. How did that happen?
Well, you know, they came to us, and for me it was kind of like you know, it felt like being on the same label as some of my heroes, you know, and so it's been a really good thing, you know. In terms of the music business, you know, every day you wake up and it's completely different than it was the day before, and the only thing I know how to do is just keep trying to make, you know, real handmade from the heart music. That's the only thing I know how to do. Beyond that, I don't know what's going to happen with the music business, how people are going to want to consume their music and buy it. Who knows? And I know that that doing it live is a human being picking up a real instrument and playing it with their hands live in front of somebody. That can't be downloaded yet, thank goodness. So,
and for that reason, if you go out and hear the Reverend Payton in another 40 minutes or so, you're going to hear some music that even he doesn't know what he's going to be playing.
That's right, yeah.
With these collaborators who themselves are incredibly impressive musicians. Jimbo Mathis, formerly of Squirrel Nut Zippers, and an amazing musician in his own right as a soloist, and Charlie Parr, whose stuff is just great out there, country, folk, blues.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
Yeah, now the Big Damn Band that you tour with, a lot of your records on that bring together, at least to my ears, the blues with a kind of energy and a drive that almost sounds like punk at times.
You know, people say that sometimes, but like, I never listened to anything but blues when I was a kid. I never cared about anything else. And I think that, you know, if you go back and like, you know, imagine like, you know, like, I don't know, like Charlie Patton, maybe Mississippi Boll Weevil. You know, imagine that with drums, you know. I mean, like it might end up on a Clash record or something, really, truthfully, when it comes down to it.
Maybe if our
so much
with Charlie Patton were with High Fidelity Records and
if Charlie Patton had lived, you know, he probably would have made records with Chess Records in Chicago, and who knows? You know, the world could be completely different. It's hard to say. At the very least, Charlie would have got his due, you know, for being the guy that literally, you know, was the influence behind Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Robert Johnson picking up a guitar. They probably wouldn't have if it hadn't been for Charlie Patton. That's amazing.
You can hear also, and you can buy an album by the Reverend Payton called Payton on Patton. Is that it? And
that's right.
Nothing but Charlie Patton covers. And
I just wanted to pay tribute to him. I felt like he has never gotten his real due, and I think he's starting to a little bit. You know, people are coming around, and they're realizing the importance of Charlie's music to American music, you know. If it hadn't been for Charlie Patton, this is a fact. If it hadn't been for Charlie Patton, what we probably would be listening to now is pop banjo music and big band stuff. And that's like rock and roll wouldn't have happened. Even country music, as we know it, would have been completely different. Like, you know, fellas like Hank Sr., you know, they like that might have been completely different. He was influenced by someone who was directly influenced by Charlie Patton.
Why do you think it is that that Robert Johnson and some others have gotten more press in blues history?
Man, I think I know exactly why. You know, first off, Charlie's recordings are rough.
Yeah.
They're rough.
Yeah, you got to want to listen to them.
You have to. I always tell people, you know, you have to make you come at it with your pop damaged ears, and it's going to be hard to listen to. You know. And you have to really, you know, cut through the hisses and pops and listen to it for what it is. You know, Charlie Patton recorded in the back of a furniture shop in Richmond, Indiana.
Really?
In Richmond, Indiana. His first recordings were in Richmond, Indiana, in the back of a furniture store. And on equipment that was described as antiquated for 1929, if you can imagine that. So Robert Johnson got to record, you know, 5 years later on the most modern recording equipment that was available at the time. And, you know, Charlie Patton's masters were on wax cylinders. They were melted down almost immediately. Robert Johnson's masters were on aluminum discs. They are still in existence. So when you listen to a Charlie Patton record now, you're listening to someone's private 78 record collection. When you're listening to a Robert Johnson record, you are listening to the original cut aluminum disc masters. So that's another reason why. And then also, too, the BS story about Robert Johnson selling his soul to the devil. That's another thing that I think adds to the legend. You know, people love legends and mythology and whatnot. And, you know, Robert Johnson never claimed that. He never made that claim. You know, it was actually Tommy Johnson that said that. And it got sort of associated with Robert Johnson because he had some songs that had dark lyrics. And And you know, I guess, you know, part of it is, you know, Robert Johnson had he was murdered, so there's that death. He had a more interesting death story. He died at 27, which is, you know, the big music number that there's all this legend surrounding it. You know, Charlie Patton died in his 40s of natural causes. It's not quite as sexy as being murdered in a blues venue by a jealous husband bartender. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's all it takes is just simply a better story in that way.
So Charlie Patton as a fingerstyle emulator, icon for you, Mississippi John Hurt maybe?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
John Hurt, Furry Lewis, Fred McDowell. Oh, man, I mean, just you know, amazing stuff. Bucka White. Yeah. You know, these guys are giants, and you know, they can do so much with just so little. And you know, part of that is you know, when you're playing you know, when you're playing blues on a guitar, especially slide guitar, because really slide guitar lends itself to blues music. And one of the reasons it does is because blues exists for the most part outside of the chromatic scale. And that's where so many people get it wrong. You know, you play the chromatic scale and it's not quite right. Like if I were to go, but if I go, you hear the difference? Well, there's actually, those are real notes in between the notes. And if you go to, if you pick up, there's certain instruments across the world. If you were to go to India, if you were to go to Africa, and if you were to go to the Middle East, and you were to play some of these instruments, some of those notes that are between the chromatic notes that are, you know, on the frets on a guitar or the keys on a piano, there are real notes that actually exist that are in their scale. And in blues, you play those notes. And a lot of times people don't realize when they're bending up, like the blue note, the flatted third, when you get to, it exists in a real place. It's actually a real note. And if you don't find those notes, flatted thirds, flatted sevenths, you know, not a single part of that was chromatic with like the root, playing a D here, right? Flatted seventh, flatted third. You know, hear that difference? Like the only chromatic note in there was the root, what my thumb was playing. What my fingers did was barely a chromatic note in the entire thing.
So in the big damn band that we're going to hear tomorrow, your thumb is playing bass for us. And,
that's right.
And your guitar is playing chords, and your voice is singing. You got a lot going on.
Yeah, and I'll be pulling that same duty today. Only trying to drive the train and at the same time follow my friends who are going to be leading at some point too. So well, a lot going on.
Speaking of those friends, they're probably gathering downstairs and they might be waiting for you.
Yeah, I think they are.
I think that we probably ought to wish you good luck and send you on your way so that you don't be late for your own show.
I think so. Well, thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.